Now to Missouri Republican Senator Roy Blunt, who's chairman of the Senate Republican Policy Committee. Senator, the president is saying that they may not be able to get the voting rights through as now, of course. It's been a rough week for him. He's lashed out. He was obviously extraordinarily livid today coming out of that caucus meeting. So where does this all go from here?
Well, I think what the Senate's going to be doing is moving forward as the unique body the Senate is, where we have the ability to reach some consensus before you move forward. The option is what happens in the House every time the House changes parties. They send a lot of bills over to the Senate that aren't going anywhere because they're too drastically headed in one direction. And then the next time it changes parties, they send bills over that would have reversed those bills if those bills would have ever become law. That's certainly not what you need. And also what we've got here is an attempt to once again federalize something that's been working well for a couple hundred years. I think states and local election officials are the place for elections to be conducted. There's generally been a consensus on that for decades, including President Obama in 2016 saying the diversity of the election system in America was one of the strengths of the system. The bill that come over from the House is 765 pages. It's not a reiteration of the 12-page 1965 Voting Rights Act. It's a federal takeover of elections. It's not the right way to go. I think Democrats are not going to be able to get this done. But more importantly, you had Senator Sinema, and I think other Democrats may now step up and say, we're not for changing the rules. We don't want the House to become the Senate. The economic impact of that uncertainty, the regulatory impact of that constant uncertainty would all be bad. And I hope we can continue through the rest of this Congress to maintain that unique ability that the Senate has, right, to where you have to work with the other side.
Right. And of course, that's Senator Manchin and Sinema both have expressed that they believe that is a sacred part of the job. What about the messaging part of this? It's the notion, and it dovetails with an overarching narrative that's been building up, that if the Republicans win the midterm in the next presidential election, democracy in itself is at great risk, that this country will never look the same. But now that, you mentioned the Voting Rights Act in 1965, it was extended in 2006 for another 25 years. Yet the narrative is that there's an urgency, or lots of folks, including black Americans, will lose the right to vote. How dangerous is that?
Well, it's very dangerous, and what the Democrats are doing here is destroying faith in a system that people should have every reason to have faith in. They're looking at states that leaned forward in 2000 and did some things they'd never done before because of the pandemic environment. When that election was over, those states looked back, and I think in virtually every case, they kept some of the things that they thought should become permanently part of the system. But other things they might have done, like drive-in voting and mailing ballots to everybody that in various states didn't meet the long-term standard.
Right.
I haven't found a state yet that hasn't made really steps forward in this process from 2018 than this list of states the Democrats are talking about. They generally have more early voting, more places to vote, more days of voting than states like New York or Connecticut or Delaware. I think the idea that Republican legislators are trying to take away voting rights and Democrat legislators are not is just not true. I'd be glad to debate this bill on the floor, but it's not what our friends on the other side say it is. And the more people look at it, the more they begin to realize that. You've got money for politicians, tax money for politicians for campaigns. You make the Federal Elections Commission a partisan entity. There are so many things in there that people don't want, and eliminating so many things like voter ID and no ballot harvesting that people want to see continue to be where they are now.
Absolutely, and I share that hope with you that people take it upon themselves to learn more about that. So we just had the Supreme Court ruling moments ago, siding with business against the president's vaccine mandate. How surprised were you?
Well, I'm not very surprised. I do think maybe I'm going to take a little different tack here than probably most of the people you've talked to. I think one of the big winners today was probably the Biden administration by not having to go forward with something that had all kinds of consequences that they hadn't anticipated. We just heard the person you had talking about various businesses where you could go from the 100-employer business to the 90-employer business. You could go, Charles, from the 100-employer more police force to the 20-employer police force or the fire force. People working at grocery stores that have more than 100 employees. What happens if they decide they can make just as much money working somewhere across the street, and suddenly, if you even had things to put on the shelves, another problem we're facing right now, even if you had things to put on the shelves, you wouldn't have people to put them on the shelves. There might be some secret sighs of relief going on at the White House right now, that this is a problem that they can now think about in a different way. I'm pro-vaccine, but I've been anti-mandate because I think the mandate actually has had a counterproductive impact on people getting vaccines.
I think you're absolutely right. And I want to segue off that, Senator, because bring up the topic of inflation. It's roiling throughout this country. We had the producer price number today, second highest in history. We're back to 1982 levels of inflation for the average person out there. And part of this has been the inability to get workers to go to work, and certainly the idea of kicking people out of jobs. You know, just airlines say, oh, it was weather. We know, well, maybe it was some of that was the mandate. And again, shouldn't we be working somehow to fix this? Because this is a tax on all Americans, particularly those on a lower economic scale.
Well, it has dramatic impact on people who are at the lower economic part of the scale. The things that you have to have, a way to get to work, a way to heat your house, groceries from the store, when those go up 50%, 20%, 15%, you don't have any real options except to cut back on those necessities, and whatever you would have done 2 years ago with the extra money from the same paycheck, you don't have the opportunity to do now. It is an insidious tax on people if the government doesn't manage the economy in a way that maintains a low inflation rate. Putting $1.9 trillion in the American Recovery Plan into the economy in a very short period of time, something Democrats did all by themselves in March, has had an inflationary impact. And the Build Back Better or Build Back Broker campaign effort would have had the same impact. I hope we can continue to resist adding a bunch of new government programs on top of an economy that's already overheated.
Yeah, and to your point, even Larry Summers, a noted Democrat economist, warned the administration, do not do this, and these are the consequences he warned of. Senator, a short time ago, your colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham, called on Minority Leader Mitch McConnell to acknowledge that Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. I want you to take a listen, please.
All I'm saying is I like Mitch a lot. He has a lot to be proud of. But if you want to be a leader in 2022, I expect President Trump to run again for president. You don't have to agree with everything President Trump does or says. I don't. But you got to have a working relationship, because our party will not do as well as we could or should if we don't have a team approach from 2022 to 2024.
Senator Blunt, what do you think of that?
Well, as you know, Charles, this is beginning my last year in the Senate, so I won't be here the next time we pick a leader. If by what Lindsey means by that is we all need to do our best to work together and be talking about what a difference it'll make if we win these elections, of course I'm for that. But the Republican Senate leader needs to be chosen by Republicans in the Senate. One thing Senator McConnell has never done is put our members out there on a vote that wasn't going to pass, like the vote that Democrats are taking this week, and they'd have a hard time explaining at home. Those are the kind of things you need to look at when you're looking at Senate leadership or House leadership. I've been a leader in both the House and the Senate, and I think those decisions need to be made by the senators who come together next year and form a new conference. And when you look at the track record of Mitch McConnell, I think it's pretty good.
Well, I want to just say congratulations on an amazing career. If you and I never get a chance to speak on television again, Senator Blunt, it has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope we get to talk again. One of the reasons I wanted to be on the program today is that you were doing it, and I'm one of your big admirers.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Charles.